What's up, my peoples? Welcome back to another episode of The Wheel Life. My name is John. It's been a very long while since I've created some content for this channel. I've had some things going on in my life that I've had to take care of, but everything's looking good. 2021's off to a good start. Well, in my life, not so much the world, but you know, it's all good. I'm glad to be here. Glad to be talking with you all. And today I wanted to make a video that's kind of near and dear to my heart because, you know, I love kids. I've always worked with kids after my injury in youth ministry. I've got two nieces of my own. And the topic that I want to talk about today is what you should be teaching your kids about people with disabilities and how they interact with them. All right, I think this is an important topic and I'm real excited to get into it. So without any further ado, let's talk about it. Let's go. First off, one thing I think that is really important for you to teach your child is to instill in them that it is okay to ask questions to a person they meet with a disability. I've been in Walmart, I've been in Target, I've been in these other stores, and I've got little kids run up to me and they're like, "Oh my goodness, what happened to you? You know, why are you in a wheelchair?" And I just see their parents' face and they look mortified, right? Like this kid just came up to me and asked me something so offensive, but it's okay, right? We don't want to crush their curiosity. I would much rather have the openness of a kid come up to you and be like, "Hey, what happened to you?" than for you to make it seem like it's a bad thing for them to ask about a disability and what happened to that person, right? So we want to be mindful of that. We want them to understand that it's okay to talk about being disabled. It's okay to ask questions as long as they do it in a polite way. Number two, what I think is real important. As a parent, don't freak out if your child like points or stares at someone who's disabled. Obviously, you don't want to encourage that kind of behavior because it's rude in general to point and stare at anybody. But if your kid has never really come in contact with someone before who's in a wheelchair or who's disabled, they might be like, "What's going on with that?" right? And you don't want to just like dismiss it like it's a bad thing, like it's something taboo to be curious about why this person is different than they are. So don't freak out too much if your kid runs up to someone, if your kid points and stares, because you know, they're just kids. I remember I was at our local food store with my grandma. I ended up seeing a little person, right? Which I've never seen before. And this little person was minding his own business, grocery shopping, and I thought it was like the coolest thing in the world. You know, I looked and I started yelling about this person. My grandma yanked me to the side and she said, "John, you don't ever do that," which it was very silly of me to do, but I've never seen anyone like that, and I was so full of awe and wonder. But instead of like telling me a little bit about like that there are people out there who are different, we just kind of hushed it under the table, which probably is not the smartest thing to do, right? We want to make this a learning experience for kids so that they can better understand that there are people out there who are different than them, and that's okay. Another thing I think we should be teaching our children is that a physical disability doesn't always equal a mental disability. There are people like myself who's in a wheelchair from like a spinal cord injury. My body's all messed up, but my brain is fine, praise God. And there are people, you know, there are kids who use walkers, who are amputees. So it's important that we teach our kids that physical disabilities doesn't always mean a mental disability. Another thing that I think is a really good idea to do if your kid comes up to you like, "There's a kid in my class who's in a wheelchair," you might want to talk to them and point out the similarities, right? Because it's easy to look at the differences, but it's important for you to tell your child and show them that there are also many similarities, right? So there are plenty of similarities and common ground that people can find. So it's important to have these interabled conversations. Yes, our bodies are different. Yes, how we do things are different, but there are many same similarities. We want love, we want friends, we want adventure, we want to play games with people, you know, just similar stuff like that. So that's important. We also want to teach our kids that different doesn't equal bad. We see someone who lives their life in a completely different way than we live our own, and that's different to us. But that doesn't automatically mean that it's a bad thing. Being disabled is not a bad thing, and we shouldn't treat it as such. Yes, these people are different, But different isn't always bad. God created each and every one of us with our own personality, with our own gifts, with our own goals, with our own passions, and those differences should be celebrated rather than looked down upon. Another thing that's important to teach your kids is when they see someone in a wheelchair, when they get to know that person, it's important that they learn to ask before helping. Right? It's great because kids love to help, right? They love to grab on your push handles and give you a shove. They love to pick stuff up for you. But it's important that we teach them ahead of time that it's important to ask before helping. It's not a bad thing your kid wants to help, but it's super important that you teach them and ingrain in them to ask before helping. Right? That means more than you know to a disabled person, because it gives them the credit that this person or their friend believes that they can do it themselves, but they're just offering a helping hand. So another important thing I think we should be instilling in our kids is that we should introduce them to empowered, disabled public figures. So before my accident, I didn't know anybody in a wheelchair. I didn't know anybody with a spinal cord injury. I didn't really know anybody with any kind of disabilities, right? But in the world we live in today, there are so many examples on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube of so many wonderful, empowering disabled figures that you can show your kid. Look at what this person can do. Look, you love to play this sport. He plays an adaptive sport. And it's important that they can see with their own two eyes there are people out there who live their life to the fullest and are really empowering and don't use disability as just like a downer, or like it's just like a bad thing, you know, it's like to be pitied or whatever. And that's important. So if you don't, your kid might ask you about people with disabilities and you might not know anybody, but you can do a quick Google search and find a whole bunch of people that you can introduce your child to and show them some really cool videos that would just kind of give them a better understanding of what it's like to be disabled. Another thing to remember is that a wheelchair, like I'm sitting in, is just an adaptive piece of equipment. It doesn't define who I am. I am not a wheelchair. I use a wheelchair. It is such an awesome piece of equipment. It shouldn't be looked down upon. Without my chair, I would not be able to do anything. And there are many different kinds of adaptive tools, whether it's a walker, whether it's a crutch, a prosthetic leg. You know, all these tools are just adaptive things that help this person live their life in the most independent way possible. So they're not who you are, they do not define you. So I think that's important to instill in your kid, right? That they might look at this person in a wheelchair like, hey, you know, and they might be confused by it. But that's just, you know, it's important to see the person that's on the wheelchair, not just the wheelchair bound person, right? Similar to that, I think it's really important that we teach kids, this is a big one I feel, that disabilities are not contagious. I know they're little kids and they got giant imaginations and they might see someone like myself in a wheelchair and they might be scared that they're gonna catch it, right? They're gonna catch the same disability I have. But that's just not how it works. So you wanna teach them that disabled doesn't mean sick. Yes, we struggle, yes, we go through health problems, but that doesn't always mean we're gonna spread our sickness to them, right? A disability is just a disability. It doesn't always mean that it's some terrible disease, right? We're not like biblical time lepers, right? Disabilities aren't contagious and disability doesn't automatically mean sick. And speaking of that word I just mentioned like 14 times, disabled, teach your child that disabled is not a bad word. We are disabled individuals. That is what we are. It doesn't mean it's a bad word. Teach your kids what disabled means. Teach them how to use it in the right context, and don't shame them for calling their friend disabled, because, you know, that's what we are, right? Another awesome thing to teach your kids is to teach them to be more inclusive. Say they see little Johnny sitting on the playground, they're playing catch or whatever. Why doesn't they go up to little Johnny in the wheelchair and say, hey, do you think you can play catch with us? Even if that kid cannot do it, it is such a comforting feeling to be asked. So when you instill in your kid to be inclusive, to include other people who are different from them, it broadens their mind, makes them a better person, and it really reaches into the hearts of those who are differently abled and disabled. It makes them feel like they're not alone. Not everything they can do, but just asking itself is such a huge thing. It's not hard to be inclusive, it's not hard to ask, but these are things that we have to teach the next generation to do. It's also important to teach your kids to be mindful of what others go through. Yes, we are in these wheelchairs. Yes, you see us at face value, but there is a whole lot of things that we in the disabled community go through that is just really hard and really frustrating. And when you make your kid aware of those things, of ableism, you make your kids aware of people who abuse handicap placards, who leave shopping carts in the crossed lines of a van parking spot. When you teach your kids about these things, maybe your kid will be the catalyst to help change these things, right? And it just makes them understand that yes, we are disabled, yes, we are fighting to live our lives, but there's so much that we go through in our lives that people have no idea of. And the more aware people are of these things, the more mindful they can be of these things. So say they go to the grocery store and they are like 16, 17, they got their license, they see a handicap spot where there is a shopping cart sitting in the crossed lines. Maybe if you teach them when they're young, they'll see that cart and they're like, oh man, I gotta go move this. And that is just amazing. If we can raise little humans that have that empathy and that ability to spot these things out, it would be huge and game-changing for many people. This one is for the parents, y'all at home. It's important to be mindful of what you say about disabled people, what you say and how you talk about them, because it starts at home, right? If you have a negative view of those who are disabled, if you are at home making fun of the disabled, or you are just cracking jokes, or if you go out and park in a handicapped spot when you know you shouldn't, this rubs off on your child. So these conversations, they start at home. If you want to raise a little person who's a good person, then watch yourself, watch your mouth, set the example at home. Set the example that you want your kids to live out, right? So make sure you're watching how you talk. Lastly, finally, what I want you to teach your kids is to treat disabled individuals the same as they would treat their friends. It's just so important that you teach your kids to treat people with disabilities the same as they would treat their best friend, right? It's kind of like the golden rule, treat others how you want to be treated. This list of mine might not be the same for all disabled people. I'm not speaking for every single disabled people in the world. I'm speaking for myself, and I'm speaking from my experiences as a disabled person. So if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, if you're a parent and you want to talk more about this, if you want to share this video, if you know a parent who has kids or curious about this, give this video a share. I hope this added value to your life. I hope this made sense. It's been a while since I've made a video. So yeah, leave a like, a comment, share the video, subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot. Hope y'all have been staying safe, keeping the faith, and living your life to the fullest. So without any more jibber jabber, I'll see you in the next video soon. Let's go.